Okay, so continue with the Brothers Grimm here. The Willow Wren and the Bear. Once in summertime, the bear and the wolf were walking in the forest, and the bear heard a bird singing so beautifully that he said, "Brother Wolf, what bird is it that sings so well?" "That is the king of birds," said the wolf, "before whom we must bow down." In reality, the bird was the willow wren. "If that's the case," said the bear, "I should be very much like to see the royal palace." "Come, take me thither." "That is none done quite as you seem to think," said the wolf. "You must wait until the queen comes." Soon afterwards the queen arrived with some food in her beak, and the lord king came too, and then began to feed their young ones. The bear would have liked to go at once, but the wolf held him back by the sleeve and said, "No, you must wait until the lord and lady queen have gone away again." So they took stock of the hole where the nest lay and trotted away. The bear, however, could not rest until he had seen the royal palace, and when a short time had passed, went to it again. The king and queen had just flown out, so he peeped in and saw 5 or 6 young ones lying there. "Is that the royal palace?" cried the bear. "It is a wretched palace, and you are not king's children. You are the disreputable children." When the young wrens heard that, they were frightfully angry and screamed, "No, that we are not. Our parents are honest people. Bear, you will have to pay for that." The bear and the wolf grew uneasy and turned back and went into their holes. The young willow wrens, however, continued to cry and scream, and when their parents again brought food, they said, "We will not so much so touch one fly's leg. No, not if we were dying of hunger, until you have settled whether we are respectable children or not. The bear has been here and has insulted us." Then the old king said, "Be easy, he shall be punished." And he at once flew with the queen to the bear's cave and called in, "Old growler, why have you insulted my children? You shall suffer for it. We will punish you by a bloody war." Thus war was announced to the bear, and all 4-footed animals were summoned to take part on it. Oxen, asses, cows, deer, and every other animal the earth contained. And the willow wren summoned everything which flew in the air, not only birds, large and small, but midgets, and hornets, bees, and flies had to come. When the time came for the war to begin, the willow wren sent out spies to discover who was the enemy's commander-in-chief. The gnat, who was the most crafty, flew into the forest where the enemy was assembled, and hid herself beneath a leaf of the tree where a password was to be announced. There stood the bear, and he called the fox before him and said, "Fox, you are the most cunning of all animals. You shall be general and lead us." "Good," said the fox, "but what signal shall we agree upon?" No one knew that, so the fox said, "I have a fine long bushy tail, which almost looks like a plume of red feathers. When I lift my tail up quite high, all is going well, and you must charge. But if I let it hang down, run away as fast as you can." When the gnat had heard that, she flew away again and revealed everything down to a minute's detail to the willow wren. When day broke and the battle was to begin, all the 4-footed animals came running in such a noise that the earth trembled. The willow wren with his army also came flying through the air with such a humming and whirring and swarming that every one was uneasy and afraid, and on both sides they advanced against each other. But the willow wren sent down the hornet with orders to settle beneath the fox's tail, and sitting with all his might. When the fox felt the first string, he started so that one leg from pain, and he bore it, and still kept his tail high in the air. At the second sting, he was forced to put it down for a moment. At the third, he could hold out no longer, screamed, and put his tail between his legs. When the animals saw that, they thought all was lost and began to flee, each into his hole, and the birds had won the battle. Then the king and queen flew home to the children and cried, "Children, rejoice, eat and drink to your heart's content. We have won the battle." But the young wren said, "We will not eat yet. The bear must come to the nest and beg for pardon, say that we are honorable children, before we will do that." Then the willow wren flew to the bear's hole and cried, "Growler, you are to come to the nest to my children and beg their pardon, or else every rib of your body shall be broken." So the bear crept thither in greatest fear and begged their pardon. And now at last the young wrens were satisfied, and sat down together, and ate and drank, and made merry till quite late into the night. Alright, the Brothers Grimm, the Frog Prince. One fine evening, a young princess put on her bonnet and clogs, and went out to take a walk by herself in a wood. And when she came to a cool spring of water that rose in the midst of it, she sat herself down to rest a while. Now she had a golden ball in her hand, which was her favorite plaything, and she was always tossing it up into the air and catching it again as it fell. After a time, she threw it up so high that she missed catching it as it fell, and the ball bounded away and rolled along upon the ground, till at last it fell down into the spring. The princess looked into the spring after her ball, but it was very deep, so deep that she could not see the bottom of it. Then she began to bewail her loss and said, "Alas, if I could only get my ball again, I would give all my fine clothes and jewels, everything that I have in the world." While she was speaking, a frog put its head out of the water and said, "Princess, why do you weep so bitterly?" "Alas," she said, "what can you do for me, you nasty frog? My golden ball has fallen into the spring." The frog said, "I want to snatch your pearls and jewels and fine clothes, but if you will love me and let me live with you and eat from off your golden plate and sleep upon your bed, I will bring you your ball again." "What nonsense," thought the princess. "This silly frog is talking. He can never even get out of springs to visit me, though he may be able to get my ball for me, and therefore I will tell him he shall have what he asks." So she said to the frog, "Well, if you will bring me my ball, I will do all you ask." Then the frog put his head down and dived deep under the water, and after a little while he came up again, with the ball in his mouth, and threw it on the edge of the spring. As soon as the young princess saw her ball, she ran to pick it up, and she was so overjoyed to have it in her hand again that she never thought of the frog, but ran home with it as fast as she could. The frog called after her, "Stay, princess, and take me with you as you said." But she did not stop to hear a word. The next day, just as the princess had sat down to dinner, she heard a strange noise, tap tap, plash plash, as if something was coming up the marble staircase, and soon afterwards there was a gentle knock at the door, and a little voice cried out and said, "Open the door, my princess dear. Open the door to thy true love here, and mind the words that thou and I said, by the fountain cool in the greenwood shade." When the princess ran to the door and opened it, and there she saw the frog, whom she had quite forgotten. At this sight she was sadly frightened, and shutting the door as fast as she could, came back to her seat. The king, her father, seeing that something had frightened her, asked her what was the matter. "There's a nasty frog," said she, at the door, "that lifted my ball for me out of the spring this morning. I told him that he could live with me here, thinking that he could never get out of the spring, but there he is at the door, and he wants to come in." While she was speaking, the frog knocked again at the door and said, "Open the door, my princess dear. Open the door to thy true love here, and mind the words that thou and I said, by the fountain cool in the greenwood shade." And then the king said to the young princess, "As you have given your word, you must keep it, so go and let him in." She did so, and the frog hopped into the room, and then straight on, tap tap, splash splash, from the bottom of the room to the top, till he came up close to the table where the princess sat. "Pray lift me upon a chair," said he to the princess, "and let me sit next to you." As soon as she had done this, the frog said, "Put your plate near to me, that I may eat out of it." This she did, and when he had eaten as much as he could, he said, "Now I am tired. Carry me upstairs and put me into your bed." And the princess, though very unwilling, took him up in her hand and put him upon the pillow of her bed, where he slept all night long. As soon as it was light, he jumped up, hopped downstairs, and went out of the house. "Now then," thought the princess, "at last he is gone, and I shall be doubted with him no more." But she was mistaken, for when night came again, she heard the same tapping at the door, and the frog came once more and said, "Open the door, my princess dear. Open the door to thy true love here, and mind the words that thou and I said, by the fountain cool in the greenwood shade." And when the princess opened the door, the frog came in and slept upon her pillows before, till the morning broke. And the third night he did the same. And when the princess awoke on the following morning, she was astonished to see, instead of the frog, a handsome prince, gazing on her with the most beautiful eyes she had ever seen, and standing at the head of her bed. He told her that he had been enchanted by a spiteful fairy, who had changed him into a frog, and that he had been fated so to abide till some princess should take him out of the spring, and let him eat from her plate, and sleep upon her bed for 3 nights. You, said the prince, have broken his cruel charm, and now I have nothing to wish for but that you should go with me into my father's kingdom, where I will marry you and love you as long as you live. The young princess, you must be sure, was not long in saying yes to all this. And as they spoke, a gay coach drove up, with 8 beautiful horses decked with plumes of feather and a golden harness, and behind coach rode the prince's servant, faithful Heinrich, who had bewailed the misfortunes of his dear master during his enchantment, so long and so bitterly that his heart had well nigh burst. They then took leave of the king and got into the coach with 8 horses, and all set out full of joy and merriment for the prince's kingdom, which they reached safely, and there they lived happily a great many years. All right, The Cat and Mouse in Partnership, the Brothers Grimm. A certain cat had made the acquaintance of a mouse, and had said so much of her about the great love and friendship she felt for her, that at length the mouse agreed that they should live and keep house together. "But we must make a provision for winter, or else we shall suffer from hunger," said the cat. "And you, little mouse, cannot venture everywhere, or you will be caught in a trap some day." The good advice was followed, and a pot of fat was bought, but they did not know where he put it. At length, after much consideration, the cat said, "I know no place where it would be better stored up, that microwave up there, up in the church, for no one dares take anything away from there. We will set it beneath the altar, and not touch it until we are really in need of it." So the pot was placed in safety, but it is not long before the cat can great yearning for it, and said to the mouse, "I want to tell you something, little mouse. My cousin brought a little son into the world and asked me to be godmother. He is a white with brown spots, and I am to hold him over the font at the christening. Let me go out today, and you look after the house by yourself." Yes, yes," answered my mouse. "By all means go, and if you get anything very good to eat, think of me. I should like a drop of sweet red christening wine myself." All this, however, was untrue. The cat had no cousin, and had not been asked to be godmother. She sent straight to the church, sold to the pot of fat, began to lick at it, and licked the top of the fat off. Then she took a walk upon the roofs of the town, looked out for opportunities, and stretched herself in the sun, and licked her lips whenever she thought of the pot of fat. And not until it was evening did she return home. "Well, here you are again," said the mouse. "No doubt you have had a merry day." "All went well," answered the cat. "What time do they give the child?" "Top off," said the cat quite coolly. "Top off," cried the mouse. "That is a very odd and uncommon name. Is it a usual one in your family?" "What does that matter?" said the cat. "It's no worse than Crumb Still, as your gold children are called." Before long the cat was seized by another fit of yearning. She said to the mouse, "You must do me a favor and once more manage the house for a day long. I am again asked to be godmother, and as the child had a white ring round its neck, I cannot refuse." The good mouse consented, but the cat crept behind the town walls to the church and devoured half the pot of fat. "Nothing ever seems so good as what one keeps to oneself," said she, and was quite satisfied with her day's work. When she went home, the mouse inquired, "And what was the child christened?" "Half done," answered the cat, "half done." "What are you saying? I never heard the name in my life. I wager anything it is not in the calendar." The cat's mouth soon began to water for some larking. "All good things go in threes," said she. "I am asked to stand godmother again. The child is quite black, only with white paws. But with that exception, it has not a single white hair on its whole body. This whole happens once every few years. You will let me go, won't you?" "Top off, half done," answered the mouse. They are such odd names, they make me very thoughtful. You sit at home, said the cat, and in your dark gray fur coat and long tail you are filled with fancies. That's because you do not go out in the daytime. During the cat's absence, the mouse cleansed the house and put it in order, but the greedy cat entirely emptied the pot of fat. When everything is eaten up, one has some peace, said she to herself, and well filled, in fact, she did not return home till night. The mouse at once asked what name had been given to the third child. It will not please you more than the others, said the cat. He is called All Gone, cried the mouse. That is the most suspicious name of all. I have never seen it in print. All gone, what can that mean? And she took her head, curled herself, and lay down asleep. From this time forth no one invited the cat to be godmother, but when the winter had come and there was no longer anything to be found outside, the mouse thought of their provision, and said, Come, cat, will we go out to our pot of fat which we have stored up for ourselves, which shall enjoy that? Yes, answered the cat, you will enjoy it as much as you would enjoy sticking the dainty tongue of yours out of the window. They set out on the way, but when they arrived the pot of fat certainly was still in its place, but it was empty. Alas, said the mouse, now I see what has happened. Now it comes to light. You, a true friend, you have devoured all when you were standing godmother. First top off and half done then. Will you hold your tongue? Cried the cat. One more word, and I will eat you too. All gone was already on the poor mouse's lips. Scarcely had she spoken it before the cat sprang on her, seized her, and swallowed her down. Verily, that is the way of the world. The Goose Girl, the Brothers Grimm. The king of a great land died and left his queen to take care of their only child. This child was a daughter who was very beautiful, and her mother loved her dearly and was very kind to her. And there was a good fairy, too, who was fond of the princess, and helped her mother to watch over her. When she grew up, she was betrothed to a prince who lived a great way off. And as the time drew near for her to be married, she got ready to set off on her journey to his country. Then the queen, her mother, packed up a great many costly things, jewels and gold and silver trinkets, fine dresses, and in short everything that became a royal bride. And she gave her a waiting maid to ride with her, and give her into the bridegroom's hands, and each had a horse for the journey. Now the princess's horse was the fairy's gift, and it was called Falada and could speak. When the time came for them to set out, the fairy went into her bedchamber and took a little knife and cut off a lock of her hair, gave it to the princess, and said, Take care of it, dear child, for it is a charm that may be of use to you on the road. Then they all took a sorrowful leave of the princess, and she put the lock of hair into the bosom, got upon her horse, and set off on her journey to her bridegroom's kingdom. One day, as they were riding along by a brook, the princess began to feel very thirsty, and she said on her maid, Pray get down and fetch me some water in my golden cup out of yonder brook, for I want to drink. Nay, said the maid, if you are thirsty, get off yourself, and stoop down by the water and drink. I shall not be your waiting maid any longer. Then she was so thirsty she got down and out over the little brook and drank, for she was so frightened and dared not bring out her golden cup. And she wept and said, Alas, what will become of me? And the lock answered her and said, Alas, alas, if thy mother knew it, sadly, sadly, would she rue it? But the princess was very gentle and meek, so she said nothing to her maid's ill behavior, but got upon her horse again. Then all rode further on their journey, till the day grew so warm, and the sun so scorching that the bride began to feel very thirsty again. And at last, when they came to a river, she forgot her maid's rude speech, and said, Pray get down, and fetch me some water to drink in my golden cup. But the maid answered her, and even spoke more haughtily than before, Drink if you will, but I shall not be your waiting maid. Then the princess was so thirsty that she got off her horse and lay down and held her head over the running stream and cried and said, "What will become of me?" And the lock of hair answered her again, "Alas, alas, since thy mother knew it, sadly, sadly would she rue it." And as she leaned down to drink, the lock of hair fell down her bosom and floated away with the water. Now she was so frightened that she did not see it, but her maid saw it and was very glad, for she knew the charm, and she saw that the poor bride would be in her power now, that she had not lost the hair. So when the bride had done drinking, and would have gotten up upon Falada again, the maid said, "I shall ride upon Falada, and you may have my horse instead." So she was forced to give up her house, and soon afterwards to take off her royal clothes and put on a maid's shabby ones. At last, as they drew near the end of their journey, this treacherous servant threatened to kill her mistress if she ever told anyone what had happened. But Falada saw it all and marked it well. And then the waiting maid got upon Falada, and the real bride rode upon the other horse, and they went on this way till at last they came to a royal court. There was a great joy at their coming, and the prince flew to meet them, and lifted the maid from her house, thinking she was the one who was to be his wife. And she was led upstairs to the royal chamber, but the true princess was told to stay in the court below. Now, the old king happened just then to have nothing else to do, so he amused himself by sitting at his kitchen window, looking at what was going on, and he saw her in the courtyard. As she looked very pretty and too delicate for a waiting maid, he went up into the royal chamber to ask the bride who she had brought with her, that was thus left standing in the court below. "I brought her with me for the sake of her company on the road." "No," said she, "pray give the girl some work to do, that she may not be idle." The old king could not for some time think of any work for her to do, but at last he said, "Nay, I have a lad who takes care of my geese. She may go and help him." Now the name of this lad that the real bride was to help in watching the king's geese was Clayton. But the false bride said to the prince, "Dear husband, pray do me one piece of kindness." "That I will," said the prince. "Then tell one of your slaughters to cut off his head of the horse I rode upon, for it was very unruly and plagued me sadly on the road." But the truth was, she was involved in the ark, very much afraid lest Falada should one same day or other speak, and tell all she had done to the princess. She carried a point, and the faithful Falada was killed. But when the true princess heard of it, she wept and begged the man to nail up Falada's head against a large dark gate of the city, through which she had to pass every morning and evening, and there she might still to seem sometimes. Then the slaughterer said he would do as she wished, and cut off the head and nailed it up under the dark gate. Early the next morning, as she and Clayton went out through the gate, she said sorrowfully, "Falada, Falada, there thou hangest." And the head answered, "Bride, bride, there thou gangest. Alas, alas, if thy mother knew it, sadly, sadly would she rue it." Then they went out of the city and drove the geese on. And when she came to the meadow, she sat down upon a bank there, and let down her waving locks of hair, which were all of pure silver. And when Clayton saw it glittering in the sun, he ran up, and would have pulled some other locks out, and she cried, "Blow, breezes, blow! Let Clayton hat go. Blow, breezes, blow! Let him after it go, o'er hills, dales, and rocks. Away be it whirled, till the silvery locks are all combed and curled." Then there came a wind so strong that it blew off Clayton's hat, and away it flew over the hills, and he was forced to turn and run after it, till by the time he came back, she had done combing and curling her hair, and had put it up again safe. Then he was very angry and sulky, and would not speak to her at all. But they watched the geese until it grew dark in the evening, and then drove them homewards. The next morning, as they were going through the dark gates, the poor girl looked up at Falada's head and cried, "Falada, Falada, there thou hangest." And the head answered, "Bride, bride, there thou gangest. Alas, alas, that mother knew it. Sadly, sadly would she rue it." Then she drove on the geese and sat down again in the meadows and began to comb out her hair as before. And Clayton ran up to her and wanted to take hold of her, but she cried out quickly, "Blow, breezes, blow, let Clayton's hat go. Blow, breezes, blow, let him after it go, o'er hills, dales, and rocks. Away be it whirled, till the silver locks are all combed and curled." Then the wind came and blew away his hat, and off it flew a great way, over the hills and far away, so that he had to run after it. And when he came back, she had bound up her hat again, and all was safe. So they watched the geese till it grew dark. In the evening, after they'd come home, Clayton went to the old king and said, "I cannot have that strange girl to help me keep the geese any longer." "Why?" "Because instead of doing any good, she does nothing but tease me all day long." And then the king made him tell him what had happened. And Clayton said, "When we go in the morning through the dark gate with our flock of geese, she cries and talks with the head of a horse that hangs upon the wall, and says, 'Falada, Falada, there thou hangest.' And the head answers, 'Bride, bride, there thou gangest. Alas, alas, if the mother knew it. Sadly, sadly, she would rue it.'" And Clayton went on telling the king what had happened upon the meadow where the geese fed, how his hat was blown away, and how he was forced to run after it, and to leave his flock of geese to themselves. But the old king told the boy to go and out again the next day, and when morning came he placed himself behind the dark gate, and heard how she spoke to Falada, and how Falada answered. Then he went into the field and hid himself in a bush by the meadow side, and he soon saw with his own eyes how they drove the flock of geese, and how after a little time she let down her hair, and that glittered in the sun. And then he heard her say, "Shoo, blow, breezes, blow, let Clayton hat go. Blow, breezes, blow, let him after it go, o'er hills, dales, and rocks. Away be it whirled, till the silver locks are all combed and curled." And soon came a gale of wind and carried away Clayton's hat, and away went Clayton after it, while the girl went on combing and curling her hair. All this the old king saw, so he went home without being seen. And when the little goose girl came back in the evening, he called her aside and asked her why she did so. But she burst into tears and said that I must not tell you or any man, or I shall lose my life. But the old king begged so hard that she had no peace till she had told him all the tale, from beginning to end, word for word. And it was very lucky for her that she did so, for when she had done, the king ordered royal clothes to be put upon her, and gazed on her with wonder. She was so beautiful. Then he called his son and told him that he had only a false bride, for that she was merely a waiting maid, while the true bride stood by. And the young king rejoiced when he saw her beauty, and heard him how meek and patient she had been. And without saying anything to the false bride, the king ordered a great feast to be got ready for all his court. The bridegroom sat at the top with the false princess on one side, and the true one on the other. But nobody knew her again, for her beauty was quite dazzling to their eyes, and she did not seem at all like the little goose girl, now that she had her brilliant dress on. When they had eaten and drank and were very merry, the old king said he would tell them a tale. So he began and told all the story of the princess as if it was one that he had once heard. And he asked the true waiting maid what she had thought ought to be done to anyone who would behave thus. "Nothing better," said the false bride, "than that she be thrown into a cask stuck round with the sharp nails, and that the 2 white horses should be put to it, and should drag it from street to street till she was dead." "Thou art she," said the old king, "and as thou hast judged thyself, so shall it be done to thee." And the young king was then married to his true wife, and they reigned over the kingdoms in peace and happiness all their lives. And the good fairy came to see them, and restored the faithful Falada to life again. All right. The Brothers Grimm, The Adventures of Chanticleer and Parley. Number 1, how they went to the mountains to eat nuts. The nuts are quite ripe now, said Chanticleer to his wife, Parley. Suppose we get together to the mountains and eat as many as we can, before the quarrel takes them all away. With all my heart, said Pompey. Let us go and take a holiday of it together. So they went to the mountains, and as it was a lovely day, they stayed there till the evening. Now, whether it was that they had eaten so many nuts that they could not walk, or whether they were lazy and would not, I do not know. However, they took it into their heads that it did not become them to go home on foot. So Chanticleer began to build a little carriage of nutshells, and when it was finished, Parley jumped into it and sat down, and bid Chanticleer harness himself to it and draw her home. That's a good joke, said Chanticleer. No, that will never do. I had rather by half walk home. I'll sit on the box and be coachman, if you like, but I'll not draw. While this was passing, a duck came quacking up and cried out, You thieving vagabonds, what business have you in my grounds? I'll give it you well for your insolence. And upon that she fell upon Chanticleer most lustily. But Chanticleer was no coward, and returned the duck's blows with his sharp spurs so fiercely that she soon began to cry out for mercy, which was only granted her upon condition that she would draw the carriage home for them. This she agreed to do, and Chanticleer got upon the box and drove, crying, Now, duck, get on as fast as you can, and away they went at a pretty good pace. After they had traveled along a little way, they had met a needle and pin walking together along the road. A needle cried out, Stop, stop, and said it was so dark that they could hardly find the way, and such dirty walking they could not get on at all. He told them that he had his friends, the pin, had been in a public house a few miles off, and had sat drinking till they had forgotten how late it was. He begged therefore that the travelers would be so kind to give them a lift in their carriage. Chanticleer, observing that they were but thin fellows and not likely to take up much room, told them they might ride, but made them promise not to dirty the wheels of the carriage in getting in, or not to tread on Parley's toes. Late at night they arrived at an inn, and it was bad traveling in the dark, and the duck seemed much tired and waddled about a good deal from one side to the other. They made up their minds to pick up their quarters there. But the landlord at first was unwilling, and said his house was full, thinking they might not be very respectable company. However, they spoke civilly to him, and gave him the egg which Parley had laid by the way, and said they would give him the duck, who was in the habit of laying one every day. So at last he let them come in, and they bespoke a handsome supper, and spent the evening very jollily. Early in the morning, before it was quite light, and when nobody was stirring in the inn, Chanticleer awakened his wife, and fetching the egg they peeked a hole in it, ate it up, and threw the shells into the fireplace. They then went to the pin and needle, who were fast asleep, and seizing them by the head, stuck one into the landlord's easy chair, and the other into his handkerchief. And having done this, they crept away as softly as possible. However, the duck, who slept in the open air in the yard, heard them coming, and jumping into the brook which ran close by the inn, soon swam out of their reach. An hour or two afterwards, the landlord got up and took his handkerchief to wipe his face, but the pin ran into him and pricked him. Then he walked into the kitchen to light his pipe at the fire, but when he stirred it up, the eggshells flew into his eyes and almost blinded him. "Bless me," said he, "all the world seemed to have design against my head this morning." And so saying, he threw himself sulkily into an easy chair. But, oh dear, the needle ran into him, and this time the pain was not in his head. He now flew into a very great passion, and suspecting the company who had come in the night before, he went to look after them, but they were all off. So he swore that he never again would take in such a troop of vagabonds, who ate a great deal, paid no reckoning, and gave him nothing for his trouble but their apish tricks. Number 2. How Chanticleer and Parley went to visit Mr. Korbes. Another day, Chanticleer and Parley wished to ride out together, so Chanticleer built a handsome carriage with 4 red wheels and harnessed 6 mice to it, and then he and Parley got into the carriage and away they drove. Soon afterward the cat met them and said, "Where are you going?" And Chanticleer replied, "On our way, a visit to pay to Mr. Corpse the fox today." Then the cat said, "Take me with you," Chanticleer said, "with all my heart. Get up behind and be sure you do not fall off. Take care of this handsome coach of mine, nor dirty my pretty red wheels so fine. Now, mice, be ready and wheels run steady, for we are going to visit a pay and Mr. Corpse the fox today." Soon after came a millstone, an egg, a duck, and a pin, and Chanticleer gave them all leave to get into the carriage and go with him. When they arrived at Mr. Corpse's house, he was not at home, so the mice drew the carriage into the couch house. Chanticleer and Parley flew upon a beam, the cat sat down in the fireplace, the duck got into the washing cistern, the pin stuck himself into the bed pillow, the millstone laid himself over the house door, and the egg rolled himself up in the towel. When Mr. Corpse came home, he went into the fireplace to make a fire, but the cat threw all the ashes in his eyes. So he ran into the kitchen to wash himself, but the duck splashed all the water in his face. And when he tried to wipe himself, the egg broke to pieces in the towel all over his face and eyes. Then he was very angry and went without his supper to bed, and when he laid his head on the pillow, his pin ran into his cheek, and this he became quite furious, and jumping up would have run out of the house. But when he came to the door, the millstone fell down on his head and killed him on the spot. Number 3, how Parley died and was buried, and how Chanticleer died of grief. Another day, Chanticleer and Parley agreed to go again to the mountains to eat nuts, and it was settled that all the nuts which they found should be shared equally between them. Now Parley found a very large nut, but she said nothing about it to Chanticleer, and kept it all to herself. However, it was so big that she could not swallow it, and stuck it in her throat. Then she was in a great fright and cried out to Chanticleer, "Pray run as fast as you can and fetch me some water, or I shall be choked." Chanticleer ran as fast as he could to the river and said, "River, give me some water, for Parley lies in the mountain and will be choked by a great nut." The river said, "Run first to the bride and ask her for a silken cord to draw out the water." Chanticleer ran to the bride and said, "Bride, you must give me a silken cord, for then the river will give me the water, and the water I will carry to Parley, who lies on the mountain, will be choked by a great nut." But the bride said, "Run first and bring me my garland that is hanging on a willow in the garden." Then Chanticleer ran to the garden and took the garland from the bow where it hung, and brought it to the bride. And when the bride gave him the silken cord, and he took the silken cord to the river, and the river gave him water, and he carried the water to Parley, but in the meantime she was choked by the great nut, and lay quite dead, and never moved any more. The Chanticleer was very sorry, and cried bitterly, and all the beasts came and wept with him over poor Parley. And 6 mice built a little hearsay to carry her to her grave, and when it was ready they harnessed themselves before it, and Chanticleer drove them. On the way they met the fox. Where are you going, Chanticleer?" said he. "To bury my Parley," said the other. "May I go with you?" said the fox. "Yes, but you must get up behind, or my horses will not be able to draw you." Then the fox got up behind, and presently the wolf, the bear, the goat, and all the beasts of the woods came and climbed up the hearse. So on they went till they came to a rapid stream. "How shall we get over?" said Chanticleer. Then said a straw, "I will lay myself across, and you may pass over upon me." But as the mice were going over, the straw slipped away and fell into the water, and the 6 mice all fell in and were drowned. What was to be done? Then a large log of wood came and said, "I am big enough. I will lay myself across the stream, and you shall pass over upon me." So he laid himself down, but they managed so clumsily that the log of wood fell in and was carried away by the stream. Then a stone, who saw what had happened, came up and kindly offered to help poor Chanticleer by laying himself across the stream. And this time he got safe to the other side with the hearse and managed to get Parley out of it. But the fox and the other mourners who were sitting behind were too heavy and fell back into the water and were all carried away by the stream and drowned. Thus Chanticleer was left alone with his dead Parley, and having dug a grave for her, he laid her in it, and made a little hillock over her. And then he sat down by the grave and wept and mourned till at last he died too, until all were dead. Okay, Rapunzel. The brothers Grimm. We know about Rapunzel. There were once a man and a woman who had long in vain wished for a child. At length the woman hoped that God was about to grant her desire. These people had a little window at the back of their house from which a splendid garden could be seen, which was full of the most beautiful flowers and herbs. It was, however, surrounded by a high wall, and no one dared to go into it because it belonged to an enchantress who had great power and was dreaded by all the world.
No way but mine.
One day the woman was standing by the window and looking down into the garden, when she saw a bed which was planted with the most beautiful rampion, Rapunzel, and looked so fresh and green that she longed for it. She quite pined away and began to look pale and miserable. Then her husband was alarmed and asked, "What ails you, dear wife?" "Ah," she replied, if I can't eat some of that rampion, which is in the garden behind our house, I shall die." The man who loved her thought, "Sooner than let your wife die, bring her some of the rampion yourself. Let it cost what it will."
0% chance I live.
At twilight, he clambered down over the wall into the garden of Enchantress, hastily clutched a handful of rampion and took it to his wife.
We got this, compound.
She at once made herself a salad of it and ate it greedily. It tasted so good to her, so very good, that the next day she longed for it 3 times as much as before. If he was to have any rest, her husband must once more descend into the garden. In the gloom of evening, therefore, he let himself down again, but when he had clamped down the wall, he was terribly afraid, for he saw the enchantress standing before him. "How can you dare," said she with an angry look, "descend into my garden and steal my rampion like a thief? You shall suffer for it." "Ah," answered he, "like mercy take the place of justice. I only made up my mind to do it out of necessity. My wife saw your rampion from the window, and felt such a longing for it that she would have died if she had not got some to eat." Then the enchantress allowed her anger to be softened, and said to him, "If the case be as you say, I will allow you to take away with you as much rampion as you will. Only I make one condition. You must give me the child which your wife will bring into the world. It shall be well treated, and I will care for it like a mother." The man in his terror consented to everything, and when the woman was brought to bed, the enchantress appeared at once, gave the child the name of Rapunzel, and took it away with her. Rapunzel grew into the most beautiful child under the sun. When she was 12 years old, the enchantress shut her into a tower, which lay in a forest and had neither stairs nor door, but quite at the top was a little window. When the enchantress wanted to go in, she placed herself beneath it and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair to me." Rapunzel had magnificent long hair, fine as spun gold, and when she heard the voice of the enchantress, she unfastened her braided tresses, wound them round one of the hooks of the window above, and then the hair fell 20 ells down, and the enchantress climbed up by it. After a year or two, it came to pass that the king's son rode through the forest and passed by the tower. Then he heard a song, which was so charming that he stood still and listened. This was Rapunzel, who in her solitude passed her time and lent her sweet voice for sound. The king's son wanted to climb up to her and looked for the door of the tower, but none was to be found. He rode home, but the singing had so deeply touched his heart that every day he went out into the forest and listened to it. Once, when he was thus standing behind a tree, he saw that an enchantress came there, and he heard how she cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair to me." Then Rapunzel let down the braids of her hair, and the enchantress climbed up to her. "If that is the ladder by which one mounts, I too will try my fortune," said he. And the next day, when it began to grow dark, he went to the tower and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair to me." Immediately the hair fell down, and the king's son climbed up. At fair Rapunzel was terribly frightened when a man, such as her eyes had never yet beheld, came to her. But the king's son began to talk to her quite like a friend, and told her that his heart had been so stirred that it had let him have no rest, and he had been forced to see her. Then Rapunzel lost her fear, and when he asked her if she would take him for her husband, and she saw that he was young and handsome, she thought, "He will love me more than old Dame Gothel does," and she said yes, and laid her hand in his. She said, I will willingly go away with you, but I do not know how to get down. Bring with you a skein of silk every time that you come, and I will weave a ladder with it, and when this is ready I will descend, and you will take me on your horse. They agreed that until the time he should come to her every evening, for the old woman came by day. The enchantress remarked nothing of this, until once Rapunzel said to her, Tell me, Dame Gothel, how it happens that you are so much heavier for me to draw up than the young king's son? He is with me in a moment. Ah, you wicked child, cried the enchantress. What do I hear you say? I thought I had separated you from all the world, and yet you have deceived me. In her anger, she clutched Rapunzel's beautiful tresses, wrapped them twice round her left hand, seized a pair of scissors with the right, and snip, snap, they were cut off, and the lovely braids lay on the ground. And she was so pitiless that she took poor Rapunzel into a desert where she had to live in a great grief and misery. On the same day that she cast out Rapunzel, however, the enchantress fastened the braids of hair which she had cut off to the hook of the window, and when the king's son came and cried, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair to me, she let down her hair. The king's son ascended, but instead of finding his dearest Rapunzel, he found the enchantress, who gazed at him with wicked and venomous looks. Aha! She cried mockingly. You would fetch your dearest, but the beautiful bird sits no longer seen in the nest. The cat has got it, and will scratch out your eyes as well. Rapunzel is lost to you. You will never see her again. The king's son was beside himself with pain, and in despair he leapt down from the tower. He escaped with his life, but the thorn into which he fell pierced his eyes. Then he wandered quite blind about the forest, ate nothing but roots and berries, and did not but lament and weep over the loss of his dearest wife. Thus he roamed about in misery for some years, and at length came to the desert where Rapunzel, with the twins in which she had given birth, had borne a girl, lived in wretchedness. He heard a voice, and it seemed so familiar to him that he went towards it, and when he approached, Rapunzel knew him and fell on his neck and wept. Two of her tears wetted his eyes, and they grew clear again, and he could see with him as before. He led her to his kingdom, where he was joyfully received, and lived for a long time afterwards happy and contented.